Okay, hi, welcome back to Reading Biology of Kundalini by Jana Dixon. So I think we left off, it's been a few days since I've read. I actually needed to process all of that. How about you? So we kind of stopped in the middle of a chapter last time. We were talking about basically some catalysts for awakening. I think that chapter was really about how it can look, what kind of things can precede awakenings, that were the lead up events. And so I'm just going to start with conditions that contribute to this kind of communal Kundalini raising. Okay, so she's talking about like a bunch of people being activated at one time. And we just said someone with active Kundalini is more like archetypal, okay? So she gives a quote, and I think I didn't read it last time, so I'll read it from the African Dance. It says, Katz, 1973, writes of the Kung people of the Kalahari Desert in northwestern Botswana, Africa, who dance for many hours to heat up the noom so that the chi, the kaya, state can be achieved. He notes that the noom is analogous to the Kundalini state. Kai is the state of transcendence. Okay, so he says the Kai is the Kundalini. It is more like a peak experience of going beyond the ordinary self. The Kai is like the Satori, participation in eternity. Like where you just in, Satori is another word for that transcendent still point moment, like a samadhi. Education for transcendence teaches the adept the way to stir up the noom and how the threshold of fear can be crossed over into that kia state, or kia. She spells it exclamation K-I-A, so I'm not really sure, kai or kia state. The noom is said to reside in the pit of the stomach, which would be like the kund and the cave. As it warms up, it rises from the base of the spine to the skull, where then the kia, or the kai, occurs. It's a painful, fearful, unpredictable every time. So this is from the book Kundalini Psychosis or Transcendence by Lee Sinella, MD. So they actually collectively, as a group in Africa, get into this state together, get into this Kundalini heightened state together. And you know, I've seen this in Bali too, because Bali has the groups and they do like the kekek dance, right? If you've ever been there, and they do several different trance dances. I went to some when I was there, and some of them they put on just for the tourists, they say, and so maybe it doesn't have like the purebred legit, although if your intention is there, then you are experiencing it. You go into a transcendent state. And I mean, just the action of doing it alone, because it's cutting you off from the normal, regular mode of reality. Like, even as a tourist, I'm like, this is weird. I'm just watching these people like do this really weird thing. And because we call it like a tribal dance, then we put it in some kind of subcategory in our mind where it doesn't have to be anything. It just can be abstract or unreal or seemingly crazy. But if you actually look at and listen to the actions where they're all synchronized, sometimes they're doing this swaying where it's literally like a serpentine wave is going through all of them. Like the people become one people, a collective togetherness. Now just imagine how that would feel. And you maybe have like chanted or sung in a big choir or group of people, like if you've been in a church, maybe if you were on a dance team in high school, or where you had to like synchronize your moves, and you could feel how cool that feels when you're all like moving together on some line. Like I did some dance where we would choreograph it. It always was so neat when the girls and I were all like doing the same moves, and cheerleaders might feel that and so forth. But imagine like your whole people, like your whole society, like imagine your neighborhood all getting together and doing like, and the intention of these trance dances was to invoke divine presence, which is the Kundalini awakening, is the divine presence of life in you. So if your whole like community is doing this together, like this actually is a way. And what I experienced at yoga school with twice a month, all the people that would come and chant the entire Bhagavad Gita, which would take 6 hours each time, and being immersed in that collective intention to receive transmission does change your cells 100%. I would walk out of there going like, my DNA is different now. I don't know how, but I can feel it down to the core that something shifted. And of course, the results of that weren't noticed for me till much later. But she says conditions that contribute to this kind of communal Kundalini raising include fasting, music, drumming, and fire. So that's the traditional like fire, hippies around the fire or whatever, you know, like the fire dancing, the people dancing around the fire together. So the fire and the music and the drumming. And fasting would usually precede, like it does when you're going to partake of plant medicines. It's always recommended that you fast ahead of time so that you are clean and clear to receive the pure message of the plant. And that's an important one. So, such a rite is probably conducted around full or new moons also. So similar to reading the Bhagavad Gita, we would do that. They'd call it Ekadashi, which was just before the dark moon, just before the full moon, I think, is how that worked. I'm remembering like 13 days before, or 11 days before full and new moon. So it's like the 2 days before the dark phase or the leading into phase. It said, like the sun dance of the American Indians, where they dance and chant for extended periods, the Kung use the energy in a holy way to tap psychic information and precognition to enhance the welfare of the tribe. But Kundalini energy, now I just have to say, to enhance the wellness of the tribe, can you imagine if we did that in the Western world? That instead of our leaders like getting around and conniving about how they're going to screw the population over and gain all the wealth themselves, like if they really, really were gathered together to think about how we can raise the energy of society together. And that is where the new leadership of the world emerges from, is in our hearts to truly do good. Now, I can't totally shame the current or previous that have been doing that, because that is the shadow, as we learn in the Kundalini, is important for the alchemy to occur, that we have that shadow element also. So we experience that with now a different version, the light version, if you want to say. So it says, so to enhance the welfare of the tribe. So there is the experience of depleting the welfare of the tribe, even calling it welfare while you're depleting it. And then there actually is the motion of feeding it, enhancing the welfare. Why I feel like this is so important right now is it's so timely. We're in the shift between these ages, and we have to make the leap by knowing it's possible. Kundalini can also be used in a more personal Bachyan sense as well. For example, Dionysian rites were first mostly undertaken by women, and then at some point in history, the men also joined in. So the women would collectively gather themselves over, gave themselves over to Kundalini, trance dancing, feasting under the moon. You think of witches in their coven dancing around the full moon. Well, this is the purpose of it, is to invoke this Kundalini energy, this life force, this inspiration for the benefit of the family and for the tribe, because that energy feeds the tribe instead of taking away from it. So similarly, she writes, a group of people can have an orgy and the energy can be somewhat evolutionarily wasted, or they can have a tantric ceremony and greatly increase the evolution of the group and the community through that. So why the increased numbers of people experiencing awakening? More people pop as more people pop. So it's kind of like the 100th monkey thing. Some people are waking up, then they're going to ripple around and wake up all the people around them. As survival pressure rises, the increased stress chemistry plays into creating the type of instability in which Kundalini can ignite. Really important statement. As survival pressures rise, the increased stress chemistry plays into creating the type of instability in which Kundalini energy can ignite. So saying Kundalini ignites out of stress, out of this instability. And that's the whole point right now, is we're collectively massively unstable. So we're like, and it's just heating up. This is literally Kundalini central. So people are just popping like crazy right now, and you see that as being red pilled, but that's just one phase of the awakening. Another phase of the awakening is not just the political stuff, but it is on so many other levels. You're becoming aware of your whole energy body and all of this so fast, and you never knew anything about it. And it can seem kind of crazy. It can seem kind of crazy, especially to other people who aren't popping yet. Also contributing to igniting the flame is our declining metabolic strength and inferior processed diet, coupled with ever-refining nervous system as we encounter more transformative spiritual ideologies. So the more we hear, coupled with a bad diet, processed foods, and like basically our whole metabolic process being inhibited, drugs, medication, bad foods, environmental stresses, it's almost like someone thunk it up, right? Like how to keep the people from waking up to their condition. But against all odds, people are waking up. Against all odds, life cannot be squelched, is the message. The life force energy cannot be put out, even if there's some casualties in the attempt at that happening. Reincarnation is a way for benevolence to occur in the overall picture, and for souls to come through and have this experience. And yeah, there's going to be some casualties. We see that on the opposite side, where the idea is maybe not as benevolent. Okay, so our bodies are making a valiant effort to throw off former trauma wiring in order to give us survival advantage in a rapidly changing world. Probably the most important line of today's reading, because there's so much in this book. Our bodies are making valiant efforts to throw off former trauma wiring in order to give us survival advantage in a rapidly changing world. Like, we've got to adapt and survive. We've got all this trauma wiring. Our bodies are trying really hard to do everything they can to de-traumatize us, to deprogram us. Our bodies are doing that. They're working hard. We're being inspired toward things that will support that. Practices, mindsets, healing modalities, food choices, all of that. We're being drawn in that direction all the time. That's our bodies making valiant efforts to support us in unwiring trauma. And I'm here to assist that as well. The emotion code is extremely powerful unwiring of emotional trauma stuff. Of course, a lot of that we eventually learn to integrate, but the first step is to unwire that trauma and like really lay it all out in, on the table, if you will, metaphorically speaking, lay it all out on the table. because emotion code just pulls that stuff like a comb through natty hair and just is like, this rat? You mean this rat? You mean this rat? This entanglement of energy stifling your ability to truly be your whole 100% life self. Stuff you didn't even think you trapped. Your logical mind says you're fine, but your energetic body is different. It's not ruled by logic. And you'll be like, really? That's in there? Well, that doesn't make any sense. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense. And it certainly doesn't have to make sense. Yeah. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit. Individuation is such nowadays that we can break away from rigid, stagnant community family in order to get the type of philosophical stimulation and sexual romantic opportunities which throw us into the second puberty and a thorough rebuilding of our body, mind, soul, and emotions. So this second puberty, that's exactly what I call it. I actually don't remember her saying that in here before. That's cool. A second puberty. I thought I made that up. No, no. But it is. It's like life gives us the opportunity these days in the Western world, especially, and that's where this popping is really like focused, is there are opportunities to break away from the normal and to get, like, you can go to yoga, you can study Zen, you can like get all these different philosophical stimulations these days more accessible than ever before. Sexuality is a bit more like relaxed in a lot of people's mindset due to a lot of things, really, but there is an opening of that, especially with Tantra coming to the West and helping soften some of the harshness of that. People are feeling more and more liberated. Women are feeling more empowered. People are saying, hey, I don't want to be in this toxic relationship, but I'm fine, a good one. There's like a lot of opening and change point to stimulate opportunities to go through this Kundalini, is what it's saying. Like, we're really ripe. We're in a fertile field of Kundalini poppers. It's a popcorn field, and not everybody's popped. But the trick is to not be in the popcorn field with everybody else, and when everybody else starts popping, you start freaking out and scaring all the new kernels back into a corner or drink of water. We essentially have to undergo these rebirths in this day and age because the way we were formed by our parents is so antiquated that the wiring in our primary matrix is holding us back in patterns which we and the culture that we have long outgrown. So we're all rapidly changing so fast, but the way we were raised is like immediately antiquated. Like, it can't even compare to what we're supposed to be holding and knowing. So we're just having to like bust out of that. Life is growing too fast. Whereas in the past, such in-depth change did not need to occur in the lifetime of the individual because the pace of change was so slow back then. The faster the pace of change, the more rebirths individuals will have to go through in their lifetime. You can see this as a Fibonacci sequence, and Terence McKenna spoke a lot about this, that we were out here, they could actually map points of novelty, and they fit exactly at these mathematical points of the Fibonacci. And the closer you get to the center of the Fibonacci, the closer together those points would become, till novelty wasn't 100 years apart or 1,000,000 years apart or 1,000 years apart, or they were like becoming to be minutes and seconds apart, even as we reach 100% novelty, which he predicted to be actually at the end of the Mayan calendar, which was 2012. But I actually think we did go through a portal at 2012 of some kind, and that we have arrived at nearly like 100% novelty point, which is 0 point. And there's a bunch of people popping awake because of that, but there's a lot of effort on trying to keep people from awakening from a lot of different sources, that there's this sort of like distortion happening. And that's what we're dealing with, is the distortion from the awakening energy and the closing down energy that are like pushing hard on each other right now. So, but we're, as she's saying, we're closer in the evolutionary change cycle. It's going faster, changes faster, novelty's happening quicker and quicker and quicker. She says our faster philosophic and psychological development of the prefrontal lobes essentially triggers this cathartic transformation, so enough change can happen in the old wiring to bring that being up to the new operation mode. So it's like shuts down, leaps forward, and has this kind of like episode, like this crazy episode, and then is now rebooted, and everyone around that's not going through that is like going, what is happening to this person? Okay, but everyone's going to get that. It's like they're going to put the helmet on you and you're going to get the upgrade, and it's your life force is going to do that to you if it hasn't already. And it will again and again, because it is, but once you've done it a few times, it's not feel as drastic as the first time. So this is really about caretaking that first time. Says in the past, such in-depth change did not need to occur in a lifetime because the pace was slow. People are fascinated with the idea of the origins of Kundalini. It says Kundalini doesn't particularly start anywhere, although some people might like to blame the sacral Kundalini for its initiation. But the coccygeal gland is merely a regulator stimulator of the major systems of the body, especially as related to heightened emergency energy situations of fight, flight, or she says the F word. It's too simple. It's too simply coming under the awesome power of the global awakening of the organism. So that energy, yes, it's for fight or flight or fuck, okay? But that's just the impetus behind it, you know? The global awakening of the organism doesn't come just from that center, and it doesn't come from that gland, even though we have both of those. That's the last place that it's coming. It's coming from the greater life, right? It's coming from life itself. Kundalini is the cathartic synthesis of the organism total. And it doesn't really start anywhere, but it starts everywhere. A cathartic synthesis, all one. If one was intent on tracing back causation to find an origin point, one would ultimately have to conclude that it would have to be the Big Bang, or the original creation, because that's what we're tapping into in a Kundalini awakening, is original creation, original awareness. Basic spiritual awakening is the utilization of the life sex energy, amplified and refined in the metamorphic transmutation of the flesh. The all-inclusive nature of the sex energy, prana, chi, mana, starfire, she lists them all again, soul, ka, icha, all of that, the Tao, the ki, the ether, the organ, archaeus, all of them, it has not been correctly understood by humanity. She's saying we don't understand. Sex energy is not just sex. Like, we have been duped. Like, that is just one of the names and manifestations of the one energy, right? Once Kundalini is initiated, it can be a lifelong process. But it is naive to think that initiation itself is the focus of our efforts. No, that's just the beginning point. She says, I was at no point attempting to raise Kundalini. Indeed, my first awakening occurred when I had no idea what Kundalini was. For me too. Even when my second awakening occurred, I still had no idea such raw intensity was possible. Me too. And it builds over time the more you're able to handle. So thus, for initiation, at least I would recommend fasting, a raw diet, overt generosity, compassionate action, and adventure to be better methods of popping than some preoccupation with yoga practices. So she's saying, if you haven't gone through it at all, definitely don't just go right to yoga and try to like get it to happen. Like allow you, yeah, you could skim your diet down. I started that way. I went on a vegan diet earlier in my life, like when I was 17, 18 years old, and fasted a lot. Like I was learning about fasting almost like it was meant to be. And I'm just having a beautiful awareness right now about how my mother really led this, and how this all does come back to mother, that mother does really know. Mother does know. And so the cleansing of the diet, and then exposure to music, to adventure, all of that is a better way, she's saying, than trying to just go have yoga classes. I didn't do yoga at all until like I was randomly interested in or introduced to yoga, when I'd been doing very much a lot of fasting, a lot of diet manipulation, a lot of music, a lot of adventures, traveling, and so forth. And then after I had been led through all those, it was almost like this random person in my life was like, hey, you want to go to a yoga class? And I thought I was really healthy and in shape. So I was feeling like really good about myself and my diet, my fasting, and my, study of all things natural. I was feeling like I'm a healthy person, but yoga kicked my butt completely. And that's when I was like, okay, I have to up my game. Like I got to meet this thing head to head. And I kind of like took yoga on as a challenge for me. And yoga then took my hand and initiated me further. So the awakening had occurred. She says, however, if we don't have some form of internal arts like yoga and meditation, then we are upstream without a paddle and are battered about on the rapids with no sense of control of the boat. That's so true, because once Kundalini is ignited, yoga is like one of the best ways, and meditation, for harnessing that original energy. And my third eye is just burning while I'm saying that, because I know I would have been screwed, like I said, uphill without a paddle or upstream without a paddle, because there will be times when life force is coming into me so strong. And I knew it, and I was just like, whoa, I am so blown open. Like nothing will satiate me right now. No external longing. It's just like a fire. And I would have to just go into meditation. And actually, India did that initiation for me. Like after I done yoga, like just landing in India alone blew me open, singed everything. There was no escape. The magnificence of that Mother Shakti energy that I landed in, and I immediately just knew, this is Mother, like this is motherland. I'm back at the source of who I am. And that initiated me. That fire burned through me, and really, it can happen anywhere. But meditation and yoga are so helpful in staying grounded and having a place to go when you can't go out there and your mind is going crazy. Yoga is a place to go in yourself, to a posture, to a breathing, to a focus that is a safety zone, so that you aren't thrown about everywhere. She says that is becoming more alive, and following your muse is more likely to allow Kundalini to become active naturally. And then some sort of learned or self-derived yogic practice will help you handle the energy and use it for productive ends. Yeah, so to allow, and I'm going to stop here. She says the inner art should be as natural part of our existence from infancy and for all days of our lives as the outer. So yeah, having that inner place to go helps you work with it once it's come, but before it is like taking care of the outer world, feeding yourself good, adventuring, like being in joy, all of that assists you. So thank you for joining me for this reading today. We just did a lot more talking, but I hope that's okay and you like it. Kundalini Exploring the Fire of Life by Jana Dixon. Once again, lulu.com. She's got the free, you can go there and read it and cross-reference words, but you're going to get more into some of the specific stuff. Tomorrow we're going to talk about some of the different yoga paths and get to the end of that part of the chapter, and then we'll begin with conscious incarnation. If you have the book, we're on page 22. We're getting ready to go into the preparation section. And yeah, just thank you for joining me. I think this is so important for conscious mental health in the world and for taking control back of our own mental states and of the power that we truly have as humans incarnate. This is some of the secrets that have been kept from us and that are awakening in us, but we cannot let them be distorted by the outer influences. We must know for ourselves what is happening and not be swayed by what the world would want you to think. You are divine. Your divine energy is rising. So let's learn how to harness it together and recognize it in each other. All right, this is Deja Bliss. Thank you for joining me. Till next time.